my name is Karla Mansur. I'm a divorce and family law attorney in Concord, Massachusetts. In one of our prior videos, we talked a little bit about the different types of compensation that highly compensated spouses sometimes bring to the table in a divorce context. And we talked a little bit about carried interest. Carried interest is much more complicated than it sounds, but essentially it's an interest in a fund that the private equity has raised. Now, it might be very fruitful in the future, or it might not be worth really anything. What helps us figure that out a lot of times is to determine, what kind of interest is the fund producing? How long is it going to take to actually invest for you to see an actual return on your investment? And what do the capital calls look like? So capital calls, it might say, once per year for 4 years. Typically they're more spread out than that, but as an example, you have to invest some of your own money into this fund to keep it going so that it is profitable. And let's say it's $50,000 a year for the next 4 years. As part of the divorce process, we're looking at, can you afford that? Will that work financially? Is there another way to make this happen? So, it's not quite as straightforward as, we have an interest in a fund. We're looking at, when does that interest fully vest? Is it producing interest and dividends currently? What are the capital calls potentially going to look like? And how healthy is this fund? So we work with the experts to do that on both sides of the equation. So I've represented the spouse that earns at the private equity company. I've represented the spouse that doesn't. And we're still looking at all those things, right? Because you might say, as the spouse who works for the private equity company, okay, sure, my spouse can have this fund, knowing that it's really not going to be, super financially beneficial. And as the spouse who doesn't work at the private equity fund, it's even more important to really know what you're talking about, because you're not working there day to day. You don't really know which funds are potentially going to be the big winners and which aren't. So we work with experts to really figure that out and narrow down what we're looking for in terms of asset division in the divorce.